In this course on social welfare and social legislation, we are now going to look at social security schemes and insurance in India. One of the primary benefits of working together as a human society, as a nation, and as a human community is that we are able to pool together our resources and stand together as a guarantee to help persons who are no longer capable or are temporarily disabled from being employed in productive work. The way this functions is very simple. The presence of a social security system that is well causes the population to behave in a desirable way. Firstly, the working population is assured of sustenance and even the chance to carry on their lifestyle post retirement. This means that people do not have to be dependent on other sources of support in their old age. These sources of support may be their children, their relatives, or charity. Social security ensures that these people are able to carry on their lives with dignity and without dependence as before. This is true even in the case of persons who are in troubled circumstances due to misfortune, retrenchment, death, or ill health, even in their working age. There is some certainty brought into the lives of the populace, and this contributes to the productivity. Traditionally, providing social security has been an activity of the state. However, with the coming of the market economy, it is fairly common for private organizations to offer services very much like social security in structure and function. At a more formal level, it is the International Labour Organization where the right to social security was first recognized. International Labour Organization defines security. Later, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights also included the right to social security among the list of human rights, with Article 22 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights saying that everyone as a member of society has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation, and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state of the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. The Constitution of India is not blind to this need for social security. Though the Constitution does not guarantee social security to us as a fundamental right, it finds expression in the scope of the chapter on directive principles of state policy. At a broad level, Article 38(1) of the Constitution states that state should promote a social order where, inter alia, the economic welfare of the people is protected. More directly, Article 41 of the Constitution states that the state shall, within the limits of its economic capacity and development, make effective provision for securing the right to work, to education and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness and disablement, and in other cases of undeserved want. Article 42 looks at another aspect of social security when it provides that the state should endeavor to secure just conditions for maternity relief. Article 43, which directs the state to secure a living wage for its citizens, has been taken as the inspiration for schemes which have also served as social security. Article 47 makes it a duty of the state to protect public health and must take steps to improve the nutrition and standard of living of the people. We may also keep in mind that the trend has been that areas that were initially covered under the directive principles of state policy are being slowly brought under the fundamental rights. This is happening in two ways. First, it is happening through judicial decisions, or what is sometimes called judicial activism. A case in point is the right to environment. Another one is right to clean air and water, amongst many others. At this juncture, you might want to refer back to our discussion, our lecture on judicial activism and public interest litigation. Second, this is happening through constitutional amendments carried out by the legislative wing of the government. Perhaps the best example of this is the right to education, which has made a transition from the directive principles of state policy to fundamental rights. It is hoped that Social Security too will soon be able to make the same transition as the right to education. The right to education, about which we have extensively had a discussion, grants a right to all Indian citizens between the ages of 6 and 14 to free and compulsory education. This right has now been implemented through the Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act of 2009, which came into force in the year 2010. Let us now take a brief look at the circumstances that obtain in India and how deep the reach of the social security system in India is. India is the second largest country in the world by population, and it is perhaps a better indicator to say that the population of India is nearly 4 times the population of the country that comes in third place on the population scale, which is the United States of America. This huge population, combined with the fact that the average age of the population in India is very low, puts us in a situation wherein the workforce of the country exceeds 60 crores by some estimates. However, and this is the sad part, less than 7% of this population is part of what is called the organized sector of the economy. Those in the organized sector usually have access to social security. They have job security and they receive dearness allowance, or their wages are otherwise adjusted according to prices, so that they are buffeted to an extent against inflation. The law provides them protection in the event of any one of the several misfortunes listed. The unorganized sector lives without any of these facilities. Therefore, the government often takes legislative and administrative steps to secure some form of social security for this huge chunk of the labor force of the country. It was expected that with the process of development, more and more workers would join the organized labor force, and this would solve the problem of social security to an extent. However, this has not been true. With the accelerated pace of economic development after the economic reforms in the early 90s, employment in the organized sector has been more or less stagnant, with growth in number of jobs happening only at the highest level. And most of the addition to the labor force has been in the unorganized sector. We have looked at what social security means. We have also looked at the differences in availability of social security to a very large section of Indian population and to those few who have access to social security. We have also seen how the organized sector and the unorganized sector differ widely in their availability of social security. We will now look at some of the main social security legislations that have been enacted to fulfill the goal of providing social security to the public. The most important social security legislation is the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provision Act of 1952. The main effect of this legislation is to institute a provident fund for workers in the organized sector. The provident fund is very useful to the salaried employee. It comes of assistance to her when she is faced with any difficulty which gives lead to economic contingency. Employee can take loans at concessional rates against the provident fund, and the maturing of the fund at the time of retirement serves as a source of income. The Employee Provident Fund scheme is applicable to all institutions that have more than 20 employees. This is one of the most popular social security schemes in the country, with nearly 4.5 crore employees covered. The Employee Provident Fund organization is responsible for handling the Provident Fund scheme. In addition to this, it also handles the Employees Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme and the Employee Pension Scheme, which is a contribution based pension scheme. The Employees Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme is linked to the Employees Provident Fund scheme, as all members of the Employee Provident Fund scheme are members of it. Employers are required to pay 0.5% of the pay as premium. The Employees Pension Scheme is a contribution based pension scheme. The contribution towards this pension scheme is shared between the employee, the employer, and the central government. The Payment of Gratuity Act 1972 is one such legislation which provides for compulsory payment of gratuity to employees in establishments with more than 10 persons. Every employee other than apprentice, irrespective of his wages, is entitled to receive gratuity after he has rendered continuous service for 5 years or more. Gratuity is payable at the time of termination of his services, either on superannuation or on retirement or resignation, or on death or disablement due to accident or disease. Termination of services includes retrenchment. The Employee State Insurance Scheme is a specialized insurance system that has been put in place under the Employees State Insurance Act 1948. Under this scheme, insurance cover is provided for sickness, maternity, and employment injury, and it is applicable to all establishments having 20 persons and above. Apart from the initial investment, this scheme gets most of its financing from the contributions from the members. The government bears only 1/8 of the cost. The Employee State Insurance Corporation is responsible for the administration of the scheme, as also building and maintaining employee state insurance hospitals. The Maternity Benefits Act 1961 prohibits pregnant women from working 6 weeks before and 6 weeks after delivery. Section 5 of the Act provides that if the woman has worked for 160 days in the 12 months prior to her delivery, she will be entitled to maternity benefits, and she is entitled to the daily wage for the days that she has missed due to the pregnancy. Services of a woman cannot be terminated during the course of her pregnancy leave except for gross misconduct. Workmen's Compensation Act 1923 is a legislation that makes the employer liable financially for any accidents or disablement that the employee may be affected by in the course of his employment. This is applicable in cases of disablement that continues beyond 3 days, and it also is relevant to remember that it is not applicable to clerical employees. The Act provides separate schedules for partial and total disablement and disfigurement, as also for temporary and permanent disability and disfigurement. The importance of this Act lies in the fact that it acts as a social security measure for those whose working lives might be cut short due to unnatural circumstances. It also provides a schedule for calculation of compensation to be paid to the injured employee. The provisions of this Act are enforced by the Labour Commissioners appointed for this purpose. We have so far looked at various schemes relating to social security and insurance. You need to remember that private sector is also making important contributions in the area particularly of insurance. However, in our analysis in this particular lecture, we would be restricting ourselves to mostly government initiated schemes. The next scheme which we are going to talk about is the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. The Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana is a card-based insurance scheme that is designed to act as an insurance cover for the unorganized sector which wouldn't otherwise have any medical benefits and would end up spending the most on their healthcare. This would compound problems doubly for them because it is usually the unorganized sector which is the poorest and would be precisely the group which cannot afford medical care without any insurance backing them. The Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana remedies this to an extent. It is a card-based scheme which requires an initial premium of rupees 30 to be paid. This entitles people to a biometric enabled card which has detail of the fingerprints and photographs of the insured. This card entitles each family to medical insurance cover worth rupees 30,000 per annum. Several private hospitals are impaneled and the card is redeemable at several sources. This scheme is open to all persons below the poverty line and several classes of workers in the unorganized sector, including BD workers, domestic helps, street side vendors, auto rickshaw drivers, etc. The idea of social security is seen as being very important for a healthy and committed labor force. Social security also helps in avoiding familial distress and affords some mental peace to the beneficiaries. It should be the goal of the government to see that some form of social security is extended to the maximum number of people. We also need to remember that a great contribution in the area of social security can be and probably is on the way of being made by the private sector. However, the private sector, because of its primary motivation of profit, may not be able to reach out to those sections of the society which truly and most extensively require social security. These sections of the society are the most backward sections of the society, the historically impoverished sections of the society. These people might not be able to complete the premiums of their insurance schemes. They might not have the knowledge to invest or to buy insurance schemes. It is here that the role of the government becomes most important. It is here that the government needs to most proactively engage with the provision of social security and insurance.